scripture reading is from St. Luke, chapter 4, verses 1 to 13. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit in the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tested by the devil. He ate nothing at all during these days, and when they were over, he was famished. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread." And Jesus answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone." Then the devil led him up and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And the devil said to him, "To you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been given over to me, and I give it to anyone I please. If you then will worship me, it will be all yours." Jesus answered him, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil led him to Jerusalem and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to protect you, and on their hands they will bear you up so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus answered, "It is said, do not put the Lord your God to the test." When the devil had finished every test, he departed from him until an opportune time. For these sacred words.
Thanks be to God.
So Linda and I learned some time ago that our relationship works best if we limit the amount of games we play. Settlers of Catan has led to some arguments. Wingspan has led to some arguments. Scrabble is a game that can lead to arguments, especially when you're arguing over whether or not something is a word. When you're arguing over something as small and petty as a word in Scrabble, it is what's called a quibble. Let us not quibble over words. Now, if you were to play quibble in Scrabble, that would be a good word to play, because the Q's get 10 points and the B's get 3 points each. You put that on a double word or a triple letter, and you're doing correct. So, but we were known to quibble over Scrabble when we played it. And then sometimes, if we weren't quibbling, we would squabble. And squabble is a synonym with quibble. And so sometimes we would find ourselves squabbling and quibbling over Scrabble. And squabble is also a good word to play because it's got that Q and those two B's. So we've quibbled and we've squabbled. And one of our quibbles, or our squabbles, was when somebody, one of us, I won't say who, tried to play the word squibble. Now, squibble is not a word. But when somebody tries to put quibble and squabble together, they make squibble, but that is not a word. And we got into a heated argument about that. Because, you got to play by the rules, right? Now, that's just a little board game. And those are just small little disagreements, little arguments. What happens, though, when they become big disagreements, big arguments that play themselves out in politics? Because in politics, our arguments and our disagreements tend to get cast as though we were in war. And so there is a war metaphor that controls the way we argue politically. And you can find that language if you watch any of the news shows, especially on Sundays, where you will hear people talking about retreating, attacking, defending, counterattacking, gaining ground, yielding ground, all of these warfare terminology that is applied to argument. And so politics has become like war in our country. And unfortunately, there is another saying that we all know, and it goes like this: all's fair in love and war. So, all's fair in war is the very opposite of politics with principle. Politics without principle is all's fair in war. And so that's what we're up against in our culture, is how do we practice politics with principle? And this is one of Gandhi's 7 social sins. And so we're going to look at it today. And we're going to start off with some definitions, because I think that might be helpful. So here's a slide here that has principle. A principle is a rule or code of conduct that governs one's behavior and remains constant in changing circumstances. So if you appeal to your principle or your principles, then that's something that you're going to hold throughout changing circumstances, because they are your core principles. And so that's a good definition of principle. Politics refers to the activities associated with governance, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties who have or hope to have power. There's the word conflict. Politics as conflict, politics as war. All's fair in war. How do we practice politics with principle? And Gandhi believed that we could. So here's just the very briefest thumbnail of Gandhi's life. Gandhi was born in 1869 and died in 1948. He was assassinated. He was an Indian lawyer, politician, social activist, writer. He was the leader of the Indian independence movement. His principle of nonviolence was very influential around the world, particularly so on Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement here in this country. Dr. King actually went to India. He was so influenced and thought so highly of Gandhi's teachings that they permeated the civil rights philosophy in this country. Gandhi became known as the Mahatma, which means the great-souled one, or the one with a great soul. He was born and raised a Hindu. He hoped for a unified India that would gain independence from British rule. He did not get what he hoped. What he got was the two-state solution, where you had a predominantly Hindu India and a predominantly Muslim Pakistan. And when they went to that, there was violence and killing and all the things that Gandhi feared would come true, because they could not live together as one. So as I say, that is the briefest of thumbnails of Gandhi. I think there's like a 4-hour movie you can watch about Gandhi. But Gandhi had some principles that he lived by, and I would like to suggest to you that when Gandhi talks about politics with principle, he's referring to these 11 things that I want to go over with you. So here are Gandhi's 11 principles. The first one is nonviolence, which I've already spoken about. Does not want to cause harm to his enemy, but wants to resist nonviolently. Number 2 is truth. Not only truth-telling, but truth-living. This is not for poker playing. This is about being real and honest in your political dealings. Self-discipline. Gandhi believed very strongly in being able to control one's sensual desires and all aspects of that. Humble living, and by that he kind of meant don't live in any way that requires other people to make sacrifices for your lifestyle. Simplicity. Live as simply as you can with only the essentials, because our possessions end up possessing us. Physical labor. Gandhi believed that physical labor should be exchanged for food, not just sitting back and letting other people work for you or letting our investments work for us, but actually doing the work for the food that we eat. Number 7 is control of palate. And so being in control of what you eat and when you eat and how often you eat. Number 8 is fearlessness or courage, which is something Gandhi clearly had going up against what he went up against in the British Empire. Number 9 is equal respect for all religions. Boy, that's the one that was very difficult to pull off and ultimately could not be pulled off. But Gandhi valued equally all religions. Number 10 is duty towards neighbor. Duty towards neighbor. And number 11 is removal of untouchability. And of course this has to do with the caste system in India and wanting to get rid of the untouchables. those folks that were kind of considered at the bottom of society. He wanted to get rid of that. So these were kind of Gandhi's 11 principles. And now I'm going to ask you to help me with this sermon. As you look at these 11 principles, I want to hear from you, where do these overlap with teachings from Jesus? Just tell me what you see on the board here and where you might think of something that Jesus said or did in his life. Speak up.
And love thy neighbor.
Love thy neighbor. Yeah, Jesus said that, didn't he? I think it was paired with the Great Commandment, right? So there's duty towards neighbor and love of neighbor. What else? Oh, that's the easy way out. Come on, give me specifics. You gotta give me specifics. All of them, all the above.
You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Okay.
Simplicity, where he talks about the bird's nest and not to worry because they're not, to me it's very
Yeah. Absolutely. That's it. Yes.
Removal of untouchability, healing the lepers, and other healings.
Right. Yeah. Touching those that were labeled untouchable or unclean, and bringing about healing, and more importantly, restoring them to relationship in the community. Yeah, absolutely. What else?
Be not afraid.
Be not afraid. Have courage, fearlessness. Yeah. Simplicity. Yeah, that's right. Living with what you need. You don't have to have, all this stuff, and telling the rich young ruler to sell what he had and give to the poor. Yeah.
The respect for all religions when he heals the Syrophoenician woman's daughter. He says, never in all of Israel have I seen faith like this. She was pagan, I believe.
Oh, okay, that's good. Roger, have you thought about going into the ministry?
And his discussion with the Samaritan woman.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely. That's right.
And then wasn't there a story where somebody comes up and says, Jesus, people are healing folks and they're not part of our group.
Right, yes.
And what did Jesus say? Help me.
Yeah, if you're not, if you're not against us, you're with us, or something like that. Yeah, and it's open to other folks. Any place that good or healing is happening, why would we oppose it? Yeah. Anyone else? Non-violence. You got any quotes on that from Jesus? Love your enemy.
Well, when I believe it was Peter started to take up the sword when they came
Right.
to arrest Jesus, he says no.
Right. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. There's turn the other cheek. There's those kinds of passages as well. Anything else that we're missing?
Good Samaritan.
The Good Samaritan?
Neighbor.
Well, which one are you putting that one with?
Duty towards neighbor.
Duty towards neighbor? Absolutely. And even untouchability to some degree because of the Samaritan. Yeah?
How about control of palate, feeding the 5,000?
Control of palate. Yeah, the feeding miracles, and then Jesus' own fasting, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But yeah. All right. Have we covered it?
What did we say about fearlessness?
Fearlessness. Somebody mentioned fearlessness. Did you want to say any more about it? Yeah, be not afraid, that passage. And then, of course, Jesus, the call to take up a cross and follow is the very definition of courage that's going to be needed. The difficulty of being a disciple, which is often lost on us today.
And taking on the devil, like today, is when the devil was tempting him to fall off.
Right. Yes, that's right. That's right. We're going to visit that passage in just a minute. So there's clearly a lot of overlap between Gandhi's 11 principles and what Jesus taught in the Gospels. Now I want us to switch gears just a little bit, and I want us to think about what are the values of our nation, not as we would like it to be, but as it has been and is. How do they stack up with these principles? And where do they disagree with these principles? And again, you've got to preach this for me. So.
Meddling.
What's that?
You're meddling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Number 2, lies.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Truth telling. Yeah, there's not a lot of truth telling going on. And it's hard to know what's truthful and what isn't, because there's so many different voices swirling all the time. Yeah.
Removal of untouchability with the mass deportations and.
Oh, right. Yeah. When removal of untouchability in this case means something different. Gandhi wanted to get rid of the category. We just want to get rid of the folks.
Well, the
yeah.
definition by defining something.
Right. That's right.
lesser.
Yeah.
Humble living, we're a consumer society.
Yes. Yeah.
Nonviolence.
Nonviolence. We're not exactly a nonviolent country, are we?
Physical labor. We downplay the value of physical labor.
Yeah. We downplay it. Yeah, that's right.
Fearlessness.
Fearless.
Because everybody acting in fear now.
Right. Yeah. Fear controlled, and they try to keep us afraid.
Duty towards neighbor, ignoring our neighbors in the world.
Right.
Yes. Control of palate, there's just, again, metaphorically, the gluttony.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And go to a fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
Suits portion sizes.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Equal respect for all religions.
Equal respect for all religions. We don't do that very well. I mean, the problem with the two-state solution with India is that the Hindus wanted India to be Hindu, and the Muslims wanted Pakistan to be Muslim, and many in this country want America to be Christian, and they don't mean Christian by the teachings of Jesus, apparently, because they contradict many of this.
So we have people chiming in online also. If you
Oh, do we? Okay.
Oh, thanks. Clancy mentioned before, number 4, I have come to serve, not to be served, the Gospel of Mark.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachel says, lies. Those who have the money have the value and power.
Hmm. Well,
Could you repeat that?
say that one more time.
No, you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we can hear.
Okay. So you have to repeat it for me now, because
Okay. Which one, Clancy's or
Both
the
of them.
lies?
Both of them.
Okay, Clancy says, I have come to serve, not to be served.
Clancy's quotation, "I have come to serve, not to be served." Yeah.
And Rachel says lies. Those who have the money have the value and power.
And Rachel says lies. Those with the money have the value and the power in our culture. Okay. So it's clear that being a follower of Gandhi's principles, or being a follower of the way as Jesus defined it, and being an American don't line up. And unfortunately, there's many in our culture who believe that being a good Christian and being a good American are one and the same. And it is quite obvious to us that those are separate things, and that our country has not lived up to the values of Gandhi or to the values of Jesus. And so that's something we all have to live with as we practice politics in such a country. Because we also know that it's hard to practice principled politics if there are folks on the other side who are practicing unprincipled politics. So what do you do when it's not a fair fight? And that's a tough one. And Gandhi, of course, knew all about that. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. I want to go to the passage today from Luke. So this is the Lenten passage for the day. And it is the temptation of Jesus. Jesus has been baptized and he goes into the wilderness for 40 days. And there he is tempted by the devil. And it is presented to us kind of in a cartoony kind of way. Every time I think about this passage, I think about, the little angel that sits on this shoulder and the little devil that sits on this shoulder. And I think about, eat angel food cake. No, eat devil's food cake. But, it's trying to present it to us in that kind of way. And I think it's kind of on purpose that it's done that way. It's almost as though it were a children's play. And they're bringing in the set pieces for these 3 temptations. And they happen like this. And it's all very straightforward. But these temptations are significant. I also think that we should think of the devil character in this story very much like we think of the adversary in the book of Job. In the book of Job, the adversary is part of the divine council, and is part of God's team, and it is the adversary who tests Job to see how faithful Job is. In this passage, we've got the devil testing Jesus to see how faithful Jesus is going to be. And so we get these three temptations. The first temptation is to turn stone into bread, because Jesus has been fasting 40 days. Lent lasts 40 days. One of the disciplines of Lent is fasting if you choose to pursue it. And so Jesus is hungry, and the devil says, turn the stone into bread. And Jesus says, no. So, which one of these is Jesus showing power over? Self-discipline, control of palate. He's practicing these. He's not letting the devil dictate what he's going to do. The second one is, if you worship me, I'll give you all the power in the world. You'll be the boss, the ruler. And Jesus, of course, resists that temptation too. Is that consistent with any of these principles? Humble living. I didn't hear that last one. Oh, in a way, yeah, that's right. Yeah, certainly self-discipline to not cave in to the craving for power. Yeah. Non-violence, absolutely. Coercion, resisting the ability to coerce. Yeah.
Fearlessness.
What's that?
Fearlessness.
Fearlessness. So you can see Jesus is kind of applying some of these that from his own gospel and consistent with Gandhi's principles too. And then the last one is a very interesting one because it's the temptation to kind of show that you're invulnerable. Cast yourself down and you'll be preserved by God. And it's this invulnerability, this overwhelming strength temptation. And Jesus does not yield to that temptation. And I think that's also consistent with the self-discipline and the humility and the equal respect and all that kind of stuff that's in this. But I highlight that one because I think Lent is an opportunity for all of us to embrace our own vulnerability and recognize that that is power. That is part of Gandhi's principles, it's part of Martin Luther King's principles, and it is a way of exercising power through vulnerability, which is what Jesus did because Jesus as the Messiah is crucified and made vulnerable. And it is through the vulnerability that the healing comes. And I think that is something that is very hard for our country to understand. I think it's very hard for all of us to live, to embrace the vulnerability. I heard a saying once that said, it isn't true that where the Messiah is, there is no suffering. It is true that wherever there is suffering, there is the Messiah. And I think you could substitute vulnerability for that too. Wherever there is the Messiah, there is vulnerability. Wherever there is vulnerability, there is the Messiah. And that is our key. And that's what makes it so difficult and so challenging to do. Because none of us like vulnerability. But Lent gives us a chance to confront our mortality, our vulnerability, to repent of all the ways we have failed in these principles and in the gospel way. That is what Lent provides us. So what do we do when we are faced with unprincipled politics and we want to practice these kinds of things? Well, the Civil Rights Movement did it. Gandhi did it. Gandhi did it. One of the examples of Gandhi doing it is in the Great Salt March of 1930. In 1882, the British Empire passed the Salt Act, which meant that Indians could not make or sell their own salt. They had to buy it from the British Empire at exorbitant prices with high taxes. And so Gandhi recognized that this was a cause that could unite all the people across caste lines, across religious lines, because everybody needs salt. And so they launched a march to the Arabian Sea that lasted 24 days. And at the end, Gandhi was arrested along with 60 of his followers because they were going to make their own salt. And Gandhi practiced what he called satyagraha, which was truth force. And truth force is these 11 principles kind of condensed down to 3. And they are nonviolence, truth, and self-suffering. Being willing to suffer for your cause. And you know, that happened in the civil rights movement. And in fact, if you read civil rights movement literature, you'll see that much of what they did in their nonviolence and their acceptance of how they were treated was they saw themselves trying to redeem the soul of America. Trying to redeem the soul of America. And so Gandhi had these teachings in his life and in his practice. And so they did the Great Salt March. Ultimately, as I say, Gandhi was arrested, but because of the protest, and what they showed was that no empire can force everybody to comply with every little thing. And finally, it got so much that the British Empire caved, and they reached an agreement with Gandhi. And not only was Gandhi released, but the 60 who were arrested with him were released, as well as 90,000 other political prisoners. All because of this practice of principled politics. I suggest that during these times we need to really reread Gandhi's life and teachings, reread Jesus, reread Martin Luther King, the Civil Rights Movement. Think about the ways that we can practice politics with principles, especially as we go up against those who practice politics without principle. But that is a good thing for Lent. It's a good thing for us to do. And so I challenge all of us. And you can do your 5 calls as a simple way of doing that, or we can embrace the difficult journey that is Lent together.